I love adventure. I love new things, traveling, just getting out there and living. But I haven't always been that way. As a kid, I loved to read and watch movies, which is fine, but I spent most of my time in my room experiencing the world through other people's fantasies and stories. So much so that I made it my dream to create fantasies and stories, to be a movie maker and a writer. At 18 years old, I moved to New York City to become a movie director, and I almost made it. I did get to work on some movies. I wasn't quite the director, I was a production assistant. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a gopher. I was on a run for the office. They sent me uptown to pick up some wardrobe. I picked up the wardrobe and then I looked for a payphone, if anyone remembers what payphones are. I called the office and I said, I have the wardrobe, and they said, all right, you can take a cab. Now this was a big deal because this was a low-budget movie and they made us take the subway everywhere. But I was a team player, so I said, no, it's fine, I'll just take the subway, it's right across the street. I walked to the nearest crosswalk, waited for the light to change, and started walking across Fifth Avenue towards the N and the R. As I was walking across, I could see a cab coming down 61st Street. It didn't slow down at the light, which I assumed meant that the light was green, and as it swung around the corner going very quickly, I thought, is he aiming for me? And then I thought, he's gonna hit me. And then I thought, run. I started to run. The next moment, I opened my eyes. I was looking at this puddle, like a puddle you'd see on a driveway with oil dripping into it in like a pool. And I couldn't figure it out. It was really weird because it was so close to me. So I put my hand out to try to figure out where the dripping was coming from. And when I pulled it down, my hand was covered in blood. And I realized I was bleeding from the head. I looked around and understood that I had just been hit by the car. Now, I had been hit by the car walking across the street carrying this giant bag of men's suits. I was a big target, and now I was laying in the street all alone, and I thought, I'm gonna get hit again. I couldn't move, so I started screaming. Some guy walking along Central Park ran over to me. He came right up to me and he said, "You're okay, you're okay." I was like a little kid. I just looked up at him and believed him. He got me to lay flat, which was not really possible because I had this giant backpack on, so I was kind of like a turtle laid upside down. It was winter, so he put his coat on me. He called out to someone walking by and said, call the cops, because we didn't have cell phones. I could see the cab. He had pulled over, he had done that much, but he didn't get out. He didn't offer any kind of help. And it occurred to me that if I had decided to take a cab instead of the subway, his would have been the next available cab to come along, and I would have been sitting safely in the back seat of his car instead of lying in the street. A doctor ran over to us, and I knew he was a doctor because he was all, I'm a doctor! Just like in the movies. He made it seem like it was really important to get me laid flat out, and in order to do that, he had to get my backpack off, but he didn't want to move me, so he produced scissors from, I don't know, wherever doctors hide scissors, and he cut my backpack off of me, which really pissed me off, because this was at a time in my life when I couldn't afford my next meal, let alone a new backpack. But he got me flat on the ground, and then he started asking me these doctorly questions, like, can you move your toes? Are you in any pain? And it really freaked me out because, no, I wasn't in any pain. I wasn't feeling anything at all. And then he left. The police came, so the doctor's like, I'll see you at the hospital, and he headed out, but he left me with all these questions like, am I ever gonna feel anything again? Am I dying? And then I thought, I can't die, can I? I mean, I'm still a virgin. Now, the EMTs arrived, and just like the cops before them, they were joking around with me. I mean, you gotta love New Yorkers. We were having a good time with me bleeding in the street and then helping me. The one EMT was like, "Oh, that doesn't look like a very good backpack with no straps on it." And I told him about the doctor, and he was like, "Doctors are such assholes. Why are they always trying to be heroes? Leave the emergency stuff to us." I loved him right away. He got my neck in one of those big braces. I got on the stretcher. They put me in the ambulance, and we continued to joke. I mean, I was good. I was feeling no pain. So I said, I've never ridden in an ambulance before. I never really wanted to ride in an ambulance before. And he said, everyone rides in my ambulance eventually. And then I noticed that they weren't playing the sirens. So I was like, what's going on here? Aren't we in kind of a rush? And he said, well, no, they don't really like us to do that unless it's a life or death situation, which I didn't know, but I was really disappointed because I was hoping, this was my one time for a really long time being in an ambulance, and I wanted to make some noise. So I said as much to them, and the two EMTs kind of eyed each other, and then they said, "We got you." So when we were a few blocks out from the hospital, they turned the lights on, they started playing the sirens, and we made a dramatic entrance into the emergency room. They got me in a bed, and I know you guys are going to find this really surprising, but the New York City emergency room was packed. There were over 20 beds, and each one of them was filled with a patient in various stages of dismemberment. A nurse came up to me and said, "Okay, our main concern is your neck. We want to make sure it's not broken, and in order to do that, we need to do an x-ray." And I was like, "Good plan. Let's get started." And then she said, "Well, first, we need you to pee." Now, I wasn't really in the mood, so I said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, we want to make sure you're not pregnant." And I was like, "Oh, it's okay. I'm a virgin." And then she said, "Oh, that's lovely, dear." And she stuck the bedpan under me and said, "Now, let me know when that's full." Here's the thing, though. At this time in my life, I had trouble peeing in a public restroom, let alone in a room filled with 20-plus strangers with nothing separating me from them other than a curtain. I couldn't go. An hour went by. I couldn't go. 2 hours. I couldn't go. And the whole time, my head was filled with these questions. I mean, if my neck was broken, I could be crippled. What if I could never experience sex? What if I could never have children? And the only way I was going to find that out is if I could prove that I wasn't pregnant, something that I was all too aware was an impossibility. It was a very long 2 hours before the nurse finally came over and threatened me with a catheter. I figured that was just one too many horrible new experiences for one day. So I hunkered down, did the deed, and they were able to prove, lo and behold, I was not pregnant. They did the x-ray. If you haven't figured it out by now, my neck was not broken. All that was left was for them to sew me up. Now, I don't remember it. I blacked out, but I know from my injuries that when the cab hit me, I flew up in the air over the cab and pulled a Wile E. Coyote. I just came straight down, landing on top of my forehead. I left a bit of muscle on the pavement as well. If I had gone under the car, if I had been hit at a different angle, if my neck had landed in a different way, I could be dead or crippled for life. And so I was happy to be alive. I was really young and a girl, so I was pretty upset about being scarred for life. But on the positive side, leaving muscle behind is kind of like a free, albeit for me, premature version of Botox. Because I can't move this part of my head, I will never get wrinkles. I don't recommend that method, by the way, ladies. Just get the botulism injections. It'll be fine. Now, eventually my body healed. Whether or not my mind healed, I'll leave that up to you guys to decide. But my body got back to normal. But something had changed in me forever. From the 10 seconds before I got hit until after I opened my eyes, I had gone from being invincible to being fragile. Now, some people learn that they're mortal at 12, some people learn it at 30, some people never learn it until it's too late, which will happen to all of us one of these days. The moment the cab hit me, I learned that I could die, and it changed the way I live my life. I still love to read, I still love movies, but I was no longer happy just to live vicariously through other people's stories. I started getting out there and making my own stories, living life to the fullest, as if any day could be the last. And I know I sound kind of preachy at the moment, but I'm saying this because I sincerely hope that you guys do too, that you live every day to the fullest, because the one thing I learned for sure is that you never know what's around the next corner.